Welcome to the Real Estate Strategies Podcast, a place for conversations that matter in order to obtain infinite wealth. I'm your host, Ken McElroy. This show is meant to keep you updated on what is going on in real estate while getting you on track to have infinite wealth and financial freedom. This episode, as well as all the others, can be downloaded on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and various other platforms so that you're able to listen on the go. To get my weekly newsletter where we keep these conversations going and explore the trending topics in real estate today, please go to www.kenmcelroy.com/news. Let's dive into today's episode. Hey everybody, it's Ken and Danille.
Hello.
And we're here with my friend David Greene. And you guys probably know of David through BiggerPockets, but he also has a very, very big team. He's based out of California. His business is going to trend well over $200 million this year. He's written 3 books on how to buy out of state, the Burr method, and his recent book sold. David, as always, great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, guys. This is always a good time when I get to talk to you two.
So David, let's start right off. Here we are with Biden once again. Extending the eviction moratorium. And Danille, we all have rentals. I mean, I know you have a lot. Danille has a lot. I have a lot. And, we're all kind of dealing with this early on. We were all wondering if we were even going to get paid. And oddly enough, as a landlord, I kind of agreed with, hey, we kicked everyone at the curb. They can't work. There's what's going to happen financially. How are we going to make
at the beginning?
But then now we're at I don't know how many times this thing's gotten extended. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been a year and a half now. And it's like, if you still can't pay your rent, you either need to apply for aid. There's hiring signs everywhere or get a roommate. Just do what you got to do.
I know. Plus, we've thrown a ton of money at this, obviously, through all kinds of, programs, none of leases unemployment. And I know that's winding down now, but there's still millions and millions, actually billions of dollars in behind back rent. So how are you dealing with it, David?
So every time something like this happens, there's always a temptation to get bitter when you're an investor. And I really think, if you think about it, it's the tenants who were bitter for a long time because they don't make, I don't want to generalize tenants, not every tenant, but some tenants are in that position because they're not making wise financial decisions. Most people would rather own than rent. Some people they like the renting. They don't like the responsibility of owning. But it's that bitterness that things should be cheaper that leads them to put pressure on politicians to then change rules so that rent control and moratoriums on rent collection, that's where it comes from. So I don't want to make the same mistake as the landlord just getting ticked off oh, this sucks and I shouldn't buy real estate, right? It does suck. And I think it is objectively a little ridiculous at this point that we're going to keep saying you don't have to pay your rent while, like Danille said, most businesses are dying for somebody to come in and work. You go to a restaurant right now, the service is really bad. That you go to a doctor's office, they don't have enough staff. Overall, it's hurting all of us that people don't want to work. And so that to me is obvious. But what I've taken from this is every time this happens, it's similar to if you're a general manager of a football team. So imagine your portfolio is like the players that you bring in, and the league has changed the rules. So I like this example because recently football had a drastic change to their rules. You can't touch a quarterback, right? Most people agree they're extra protected, and wide receivers very similar. You can't put your hands on them at all until after 5 yards. And even then, if you hit them hard and they're declared defenseless, then you're major penalized, but receivers can smash into defensive players and nothing's going to happen. There's definitely a skewing of the rules favoring offense. So if you built your team to be a defensive team, that does not benefit you. They're taking weight away from the way that you built your team. You just have to recognize that's going to happen in the NFL. The rules of wealth building, the rules of the economy, the rules of your sport, whatever it is you're doing, they are going to change. And if you have this belief that they shouldn't change, that's where the bitterness comes from. You don't want to adapt. You want the world to adapt to you. You get bitter when it doesn't work. When you adapt with the rules, bitterness never sets in. Okay. So if you're a tenant and your rent keeps going up, that could be a positive thing. That could cause you to say, you know what? I need to change something about what I'm doing. I need to work harder. I need to get a better job. I need to get more skills. I need to go back to school. I need to do something to improve my situation. So I don't want to make the same mistake as a landlord of falling into that negativity. So I just embrace, I may not like what the government's doing. I may think it's not healthy for the country as a whole, but at the same time, I still need to do what's healthy for David as a whole. I still need to make the best decisions with the rules. So I need to spend less money on middle linebackers and more money on a quarterback or a wide receiver, or however the rules are going to benefit me. So what I've noticed is that the homes, because this was your original question, I know I just went on a little bit of a rant there. The homes that I own in the worst areas are the ones with the tenants that aren't wanting to pay. And there's not much I can do. My homes in the A, B, and C plus neighborhoods, people are paying just fine. So what I found is, and it's hard to know like what kind of tenant you're going to get, but the higher quality tenant that you put in your property, and they will be drawn to the better areas, the less likely you need the law on your side. Okay. So like if your players are playing the game the right way, you don't have to go yell at the referee to try to get the calls. That only happens when your players are fouling too much or they're not doing a good job. And that's one of the reasons I've made money investing in a tenant-friendly state like California. Everyone's scared. I don't want to go there. It's tenant-friendly. Well, you know, when those laws matter is when you've already screwed up and you've got an eviction going on and you want the referees to be on your side. Right. I never get into that problem because my tenants don't want their credit to be affected. They don't want to get dragged into court. They don't want to even lose a day out of work. They're all on a positive progress when it comes to life. And so I hear a lot of the complaints that come from landlords, but if I really look at my own portfolio, I'm only seeing that on the properties I probably shouldn't have bought anyways. They were like some of the first ones I bought, or I bought into a market that wasn't as good as I thought. And so that's really the advice I'm giving investors is like, don't say this is unfair, I won't do it. Just adjust your strategy. Buy in better areas, buy better dirt, maybe get a lower return than what you were hoping for in the short term to have a better asset in the long term.
Right.
And that's a good point, David, because, all my tenants are paying, but, they all have great credit, good jobs, stable jobs, and I do believe that some people with good credit were initially affected by the, potentially losing their job. But people with good credit, credit tends to be a good indicator of how put together, you are with your finances. And those people figured it out. You know what I mean? Even if maybe they couldn't pay for a month or two, they figured it out.
So one of the things, David, it's interesting. So we have, as you know, about 10,000 tenants. So you can imagine, the magnitude of trying to collect virtually, 10,000 tenants. And so we kind of put tenants into three buckets. So bucket number one were the people, like you said, that communicated with us and paid on time and said, hey, we're going through this crazy time, but we're going to continue paying. Bucket number two were the people that came in and said, I'm going through a tough time. Will you work with me? And of course, we work with them because the last thing as a landlord or an owner we want is to boot people out. Of course, that's not what we want. And we don't want to ruin people's credit. We just want to collect the money so we can, of course, pay the mortgage as well and all the expenses. Then there was bucket three, which ended up being a small amount of people, which were the people that basically kind of hid behind the CDC, policy. They didn't communicate. They weren't answering the doors. They were, coming home at night and leaving early in the morning and all those kinds of things. And so we did have those number of folks and that we were dealing with on every one of our properties, throughout the West Coast. But what I did is I went back to my management company, which I own, and I said, okay, where did we make the mistake? Let's take a look at the tenants that we put in those properties. Kind of back to your point, I took full ownership of, because I said, why is it that the overwhelming majority of the people that are living in our properties are paying and communicating? And we had this really small percentage. Where did we go wrong? Did we make shortcuts on the credit and the criminal background checks and, all the different kinds of things that you do? And guess what? The answer was yes. We had, to your point, we had people down the line. The policies were all in place. You could pull out the manual and point to something and said, hey, this is what you were supposed to do. But they broke the rules or bended the rules for things. And guess what? It showed up when, things hit the fan. And so it was really on the property manager and on the landlord. And I found that most people, to your point, Danille, they don't want to mess with their credit. If they have good credit, that's the last thing they want.
Yeah. You need someone with something to lose. That's the key that I found when it comes to getting good tenants. So this may not be the best example, but when I was in law enforcement, I thought about my entire career, and I don't think I took even one person to jail that had something to lose. And there's certain people maybe that like we serve search warrants on that we caught you doing something you didn't expect. But in general, like I call for service and I ask you, hey, can you leave or can you stop doing this thing? And they don't want to do it. If I ask Ken that, he's like, I don't want to go to jail. Even if I'm in the right, I don't want a lost day of productivity that I can't get out. You're just going to leave. The people that would always make your job hardest were the ones that had nothing to lose. A night in jail was not any different than a night on the street. And it's not just for tenants, but in business in general, the people you work with that have the most to lose, like a great credit score that they value and they want to maintain. Sure, the moratorium stops you from evicting them, but it's not stopping them from having a consequence. They're still going to have that eventually on their record, and their credit's going to be affected by it. So that's the key: is you get tenants that have something to lose, and then they work with you, right? They're going to come to you and say, "Look, I got nowhere to go, but I don't have the full rent. Can we work something out?" That's what you're looking for. And then I guess to your point about the employees that bent rules. That's another thing that people just don't recognize about business is people tend to say, well, I need the system. What are the steps? What am I supposed to do? But that's just half the battle. Writing out the steps is half of it. Actually having someone that executes them well is the other half. And that's always the wild card in business.
Yeah, that's the property management piece.
Too. So we have all these tenants that aren't paying their rent, right? And funnily enough, is that ends right about when the extended unemployment ends. So it's going to be a big double whammy. So where do we see those tenants living? How do we see them getting another rental? What do you think is going to happen there?
So I went through this in 2008. And I'll tell you, I don't see the massive issues, that the media is making it out to be, both on the foreclosure and on the evictions. Obviously, we're going to have a bunch of people that owe, but if you look at people that are caught up in the medical system and can't pay, let's say a big medical bill, it goes on their credit, they work it out over time and things get worked out. So I think there's going to be some displacement. What landlords really want, we want our properties back. We want to clean them up and put good tenants in there that can pay. That's what we want. And that's the biggest issue for me. Maybe you get the money, maybe you don't, but it's just going to go on their credit and there's going to be some displacement. But I think the other thing, David, that they're going to find is they're going to be in for a rude awakening because everybody's kind of learned from this. They're going to be a lot tighter on who does pay rent, who doesn't pay rent. That was kind of an afterthought for a lot of people. It's now top of mind. And the other thing is, my belief is that we're going to move into more of a higher rent period of time. So these folks they're going to leave wherever they're going to leave, and they're going to have a bit of a sticker shock, just like we're seeing with houses and cars and rent growth. So, it's going to be that, I think, is we're heading into a pretty big affordability issue. What do you think, David?
So I would say 1,000% I agree with you. that for all the reasons you just mentioned, there's almost no way that something else could happen. It has to be that. You're going to see landlords that say, well, last time someone rented to you and you chose not to leave, I'm not going to let you take me hostage. So I'm not going to rent. That's going to create even more of a housing shortage, as landlords are only going to want to rent to people that they trust. And so all these displaced people who thought they got over are now going to find themselves paying. They just kick the can down the road. Now they have a bigger consequence. What I like to do is try to get even a step ahead of that. So my mind goes to, you're now going to have a wave of people that are complaining that homes are unaffordable. Greedy landlords won't let me live there. I'm going to be homeless. I need something. And they're going to take those complaints to politicians. And politicians are going to hear that. They're going to say, you know what? We have to do something to make these people happy. We need to keep their votes. And what I think will happen is the Section 8 program will get a boost of steroids. I think the government's going to say housing is a right, just like education is a right, and healthcare is a right, and food is a right. Like all the ways that the government provides something is because they call it a right. And they're going to say, we need to put a $3 trillion stimulus package into the Section 8 program. And so what'll happen is you'll see a lot more housing vouchers. I just can kind of feel this coming, right? And then the government's going to need a place to put these people. And that's what will happen is they'll go right back into the same properties that they were living into before, but the government will be paying the lion's share of their rent. And so the landlord will ultimately win because they have the asset. You know, the taxpayer will lose. You'll see a lot more inflation happen from this stuff happening. And you'll see that like the more taxes will have to go up to pay for these programs. But again, David Greene, I can't stop that from happening. I also don't know what's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball, but that's just based on my limited experience of 38 years in this world. That tends to be what I see happen is complaints happen. It creates pressure. People take pressure to politicians. Politicians try to fix the plan with the new policy. That policy makes everything more expensive. Taxes go up, inflation goes up. That cycle is always what repeats. So that's why I want to own a lot of real estate, because they're going to need a place to put people and the government's going to be paying their rent. And so even though the landlords right now feel like they're losing from this rule change, I do think it will come back around and they'll look like geniuses. Everyone's going to say, wow, how smart of you to own all this rental property when the Section 8 program blew up and you had a whole bunch of tenants. And it'll just be that, you know, you were smart and you owned assets. And so the ball bounced your way.
Yep, I agree. I tell you, I 100% agree with you. I think it's going to come through some form of stimulus. And I keep telling everybody, I go, why would you be upset if the governor or the government is going to give a bunch of people a bunch of rent money and then they're going to turn around and give it to you on property that you own already? That's actually a bit easier. And to your point, so we've bought and owned a bunch of properties over the years. I have a bunch of HUD experience, Section 8 experience, even tax credit, affordable housing experience, a low-income tenant housing programs and things like that. The one thing that the landlord can still do is screen. So, you know, I remember one property that we had in Phoenix. Literally, I was walking the property and I walked into one unit and the guy had an AK-47 literally in his living room propped up next to the front door. And the very next unit was a woman that had just gone through a divorce and was trying to raise kids. And she said, listen, this is temporary. I'm just trying to get on my feet. That's what Section 8's for. The guy with the AK-47, you know, he was a drug dealer. And then, so the point is that as on Section 8, you can actually still screen who you put in there. Section 8 is a great program. It's meant for people that need a hand, mm-hmm. and I think that a lot of it has a kind of this negative connotation on it, and it can be because your hands are tied in a lot of cases with the rents and things like that. But obviously you can't discriminate, but you can still run credit. You can still take a look at people, how they, you know, what they do, yes. and how they do it. And are they trying to get off of assistance and, you know, and all those kinds of things. And you can create your screening guidelines to, as long as they don't change from tenant to tenant. And it can be a very, 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 very good way to be able to take income in.
Yeah, Section 8 it shouldn't be knee-jerk response. That's bad. There may be a higher percentage of what we would call a bad tenant in the program. I don't know if that's the case or not. It doesn't really matter. You're still going to screen every tenant individually. And I would even say, all things being equal, apples to apples, I have a solid tenant Section 8, a solid tenant non-Section 8, the same tenant. I'm going to put weight towards the Section 8 one, right? Because you never know. Sometimes tenants just run of bad luck. They lose their job and it wasn't any fault of their own. They have car trouble. They have to go fix up their car. Like, things can happen that stop good people from paying their rent. And Section 8 is just another layer of security. So I actually think that, like, in the future, your ability to leverage the Section 8 program to get better tenants and run a better business model will be one of the factors that we use when we're analyzing deals.
Yeah. And what better to know that your government's going to be paying your rent each and every month on a 12-month contract. That is one thing that most landlords don't have right now. So in a lot of ways, this call it UBI, call it Section 8, call it whatever they want to call it. The money that flows, for people's rent is going to go right to the landlord at some point. And, that's why I still believe in my heart that real estate investing is so good, because people are going to need housing. And don't forget, guys, this rent that the people are getting from the government or maybe not, is paying down your mortgage. So you're getting the tax benefits, you're getting the mortgage pay down, and hopefully you're getting cash flow. So there's just so many benefits.
Well, and yeah, I mean, if you own Section 8 properties through this whole COVID crisis thing, you did pretty well. I mean, the government paid you those checks every single month. So. Yeah.
The other thing we haven't talked about is, and this is hypothetical, we don't know that, like, my plan or my idea that Section 8 is going to expand will happen. But if it does, or let's just take something that did happen. They just passed that huge infrastructure bill that didn't have a whole lot of infrastructure in it, right? That just came out.
Yeah, I know.
That's a lot of money. I mean, if you could get like a visual understanding of how much several $1 trillion is, you're 1,000 billions. Okay. There's zero chance that doesn't create inflation. And everything we are talking about, which is basically the government solving some form of problem, and I'm not trying to pick a political side here, but it does create inflation. Just like when the NFL changes the rules to favor the offense, the points per game goes up. You look at how many average points a team scores now versus 50 years ago in the NFL, the points that are scored is way higher than when it was a defense-oriented league. There isn't a better place to have your wealth than real estate if inflation is going to carry everything up. And a lot of the things where landlords are taking it in the shorts right now are still not even going to compare to the benefit they're getting from the inflationary rise in both rents and their asset price as their debt service stays the same.
Right. We just did a video, Danille, I just did a live this week, but also a video on how I believe everything's kind of moving toward a renter nation. If you take a look at, I've been obviously investing, for 25 years and back during the Bush era, they were saying home ownership, which was completely fine, but we were losing people to homes. And then later when it started to crash in 08, 9, 10, 11, they kind of went back into rental. So we went up to almost a 68, 69% home ownership rate. Now we're down into the low 60s already. And I think it's going to go even further, because we have some affordability issues, certainly with the rising prices. And to your point on inflation, I don't know how the government's going to curb inflation without maybe ticking up interest rates, which is only going to make things worse, right?
Well, yeah. And I mean, I think that, with wages, you're already seeing wages are not rising with the little bit of inflation that we've already had. So as the inflation goes up, it's going to be harder and harder for these people that don't own any real estate to get into the market. So we really are going to be dealing with mainly renters. It's not going to be normal for people to own a home.
That's very wise insight. That's exactly how I see it playing out. So if what I said, I think will happen, does happen, what happens is if you're the tenant who never intended to buy real estate, you win because the government's going to help subsidize your rent. If you're the landlord who owns the asset, you win because you're going to get more tenants and more subsidization for the rent that you're collecting. The person that loses is the person that doesn't own real estate. They want to rent, but they don't qualify for the Section 8 payment. They're going to get squeezed on both sides. And so what happens is wealthy people now want to own more real estate because it's a better asset to own. It's like, I want all the quarterbacks and wide receivers I can get. They're changing the rules here. And the people who are like, no, I don't want to play the game that way. I like a strong running game and a solid defense. You're the one who's going to lose. And so we're out here banging this drum so people hear and they don't get caught with their pants down and they're just, oh, this sucks. No, you're being told right now, this is coming down the pipe. We don't have a crystal ball, but it's much more likely that this is going to happen than we're going to become a completely capitalistic country and we're going to let people fail and we're going to let businesses fail. And like that just doesn't happen anymore. The government steps in to intercede every time there's something wrong. We saw that happen with COVID-19. And we've seen the way that changed the way the economy works. Like you guys just said, people don't want to go back to work anymore. If you run a small business, it's very hard.
All right. And people ask all the time, like, who do you favor? Is it, Republican, Democrat? I go, the truth is they both have their policies and, you basically, it's a playbook for whatever it is for the next administration. And that's it. It's not really, I don't really care. There's tax advantages that you get and they get taken away. There's money that you get that get taken away, and it's all kind of a balance. But at the end of the day, David, to your point, we have a housing crisis right now. We have a housing shortage right now. We're going to see rent growth. We're going to see some real stress on the renter side, and we're going to have big affordability issues, and we're going to have big inflation. And guys, it's like if you're still trying to play old school football and still bitching about why the rules are different today, then you're going to get left behind, right?
But you do want to have some sympathy for those people out there that are saving for their first house. I mean, my God, that, the prices have went up so much and they're just not able to save to keep up. So what advice would you have for them? If they just can't seem to get enough to get that down payment with prices continuing to go up.
So the first thing I would say is I started a mortgage company this year and it's actually doing super good. It's been in business for about 6 months now and we're top 25 in the state of California. So that business is growing really quick. And I like having my hands in different pieces like this because it helps, just like a general manager, when you're sitting above the field and you see how all the pieces play together. You can have two great players, but if they don't have a good chemistry, you're not getting a good return on the money you're paying them. And right now, for every $1,000 that you save, you're saving yourself about $3.75 a month. So what I'm getting at is that putting more money down on your house when rates are this low has a very, very low impact on how much money you actually saved. Traditionally, it's been so much wiser to tell people, save money, put more down, don't spend. And I would agree that is it's almost like a coach that's like, look, don't throw the long bomb every time. You're going to get interceptions. You're going to lose the ball. It's safer to just chip away 3-4 yards every run. And it did work that way under the old rules. But now that the rules have changed so much, you'll lose to the teams that are throwing the long bomb. And so you have to be somewhat aggressive. At least it will feel aggressive compared to conventional wisdom because of inflation. When they push rates down this far and there's this much money going in the economy, in our head, we hear, I got to spend $30,000 more. That's insane. But $30,000 isn't what it used to be. And it doesn't cost as much to borrow as it used to borrow. And I don't think this is good. I'm not advocating for more of this. I'm just saying these are the rules and football is played different. And for the people who want to buy real estate, I'm saying borrow more, keep more of the money as a down payment in reserves. It's much healthier to be there. That's where it's actually going to help you if something goes wrong. And buy real estate where the rents are going to go up and then try to make that asset. So let's say it's single family housing. Look for a house that you could turn into 2 to 3 units and rent them out separately. That house with the basement, that house with the ADU, that house with the floor plan that you could put up a wall in the middle and have 2 different tenant bases is so much more valuable. Okay. Make the property work, but buy it. Right. And I really think that if the people who don't just, okay, that's the way it's going and I'm going to get in line, they're going to hit a point where real estate is so expensive that only wealthy people can buy it at all. And that's a shame Because part of what made America great was that you could be an average Joe. Like my buddy Daniel Del Real's dad moved here from Mexico, didn't speak any English. He was a landscaper. He basically cut people's grass in Modesto, California, and ended up with several rental properties that made him a millionaire. Right. And you could do that at the day. And I'm afraid it's moving in a direction where the average person can't do that. And as that window's closing, I'm kind of telling everyone that a David Greene team client or anyone that's out there thinking about buying rental property, you got to do this. Even just to buy a house for yourself, you got to do it. And you got to think about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what's my rent going to be? Don't just ask yourself if it's cheaper to own or if it's cheaper to rent in year one right now.
Yeah, you're right, David, because I can tell you one thing for sure. Rent is going up, folks. And so if you're a renter, I can assure you your rent is going to go up over the next 10 years because it's just math. There's more people pouring into an industry where there's not enough supply. And, no matter what that is, in this particular case, it's rentals, it's going to push rents. And we're going to start to see more and more and more of this. And then people, in addition to that, obviously on the, we're buying as much as we can, like you, David, and we're locking rates at 2.8, low threes on these Fannie and Freddie deals that we're doing, and my partner and I are just like shaking our heads because the interest or the inflation rates are higher than we're borrowing. So we're like, oh my gosh, like we're literally taking other people's money in the form of debt. And it's actually cheaper than having cash.
Yes. And it feels weird to say that because that's so different than how it used to be. Right. But if you think about it with like my football analogy, it would be like a GM who says, look, I'm paying this player 20% more than market value. Okay. Like I could get a better player for the same amount of money. However, this player sells more tickets. So we're going to make more money having them on the team. And the tickets that they sell are more than the extra 20% that I'm having to pay them. And that is how wise business people look at the big picture. They don't just get focused in on that one little thing. And so with as fast as the rules are changing, Ken, I think what you're saying is what people have to think. I heard someone say the other day, debt is an asset. And it was a crazy concept. And my immediate response was like, how dare you say something? But then I actually started thinking, no, that actually is, that's exactly right. It's weird to say that. Like I have a lot of cash because I like to have solid reserves. Okay. But I'm also aware that is losing its value. I'm under no impression that I'm wealthy because I have a lot of cash. It actually kind of irritates me that I have to keep it in reserves. What is building my wealth is the debt that I've taken on and the assets that are appreciating in value. And what you said is people need to hear that I can borrow money for less than what inflation is doing. In that sense, it's almost in a way like free money. And if you're not taking advantage of those rule changes, you're going to start losing.
Yeah, especially if it's covered. You're borrowing it, it's covered by a renter. So,
that's the key. I didn't mention that, right? Let's highlight that. We're not talking about buying motorcycles and RVs and boats and things that just cost you money. That's what got people in trouble in the last recession we had. We're literally talking about buying assets that cover the debt service of owning them. And especially when the income that they bring in is expected to rise over time. It's like planting a tree.
That's right. So David, once again, man, thank you. I can't wait to have you on again. And let's see how this eviction moratorium, this fallout, and let's jump back on, maybe toward the end of the year and we can go back and take a look at, see if we were right on any of this stuff. And how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm on social media at David Greene 24, pretty much everywhere. You can direct message me there. You can connect with us with a mastermind I have that teaches people how to be successful. It's sort of we teach people how to make more money. That's offense. How to save more money, living beneath your means. That's defense. And then how to invest the difference, which is where you're going to grow your wealth at davidgreenemastermind.com. And then if you go to davidgreen24.com, that's my website. If you click on connect, if you live in California, you can get a hold of me or one of the agents on my team about buying real estate.
Awesome, David. Well, As always, I appreciate your wisdom. I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate you educating people and trying to help them. I really think that one by one, we're making a little bit of a difference, and hopefully can change people's directional, financial direction in their lives. So I always appreciate having you on. Thank you.
Yeah, I had a blast. People got to know, like, no one's coming to save you. We all have to make these decisions, and you got to understand the way the rules are being played. So, Ken, you're one of the few people that I think gives really sound, reasonable, smart advice. I like listening to you myself. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And Danille, thank you.
David.
Yeah. Cheers, buddy.